Welcome everyone to History Gone Wilder, part of Half History Will Travel. I am your host, the Wilder Historian, and last time I covered the first day at Gettysburg. Now, let's look at Longstreet's role in the second day at Gettysburg. Before the sun rose on July 2, 1863, James Longstreet, after just a few hours of sleep, rode to Seminary Ridge to meet with Robert E. Lee. Lee himself had awakened early, ate breakfast, and began preparations for the day. When the two met, Lee notified Longstreet that he intended to continue the offensive. Longstreet objected and suggested they swing past the Union left flank and place themselves between Washington and the Union Army. Lee rejected the proposal, then summoned Captain Samuel Johnston, an engineer from his staff, to reconnoiter the Federal position. He would be accompanied by an engineer under Longstreet, Major John Clark. After they went on their way, Lee, Longstreet, A.P. Hill, Henry Heath, and John Bell Hood met north of the seminary buildings that gave Seminary Ridge its name. 3 hours later, Johnston and Clark found Lee, A.P. Hill, and Longstreet discussing the possibilities for the day. The two engineers had rode southeast to the Peach Orchard, across the Emmitsburg Road, and along the base of two hills, called Big Round Top and Little Round Top. Aside from 4 Federal cavalrymen, the engineers found no enemy troops. Lee, excited and inquisitive, pointed to the two hills and asked, "Did you get there?" Johnston answered in the affirmative. The three generals met for a few moments, then Longstreet and Hill walked away. Lee told Johnston to join Longstreet. Johnston believed that meant for him to aid him in any way that he could. The information Johnston gave Lee was inaccurate, though. Union infantry of the 3rd Corps occupied the ground to the north of the two hills, and although mist could have obscured the view of the staff member, he should have been able to hear the men and animals not too far away. This would have serious implications for the day's fighting. Lafayette McLaws arrived to meet with Lee and Longstreet. Although most agree that he arrived after Johnston had returned with the information, McLaws argued that he arrived before the staffer returned. If he had arrived before, then Lee would not have had the information claimed in the account, but this is how McLaws remembered it. According to McLaws, Lee pointed to a map he was holding and drew a perpendicular line across the Emmitsburg Road, saying, "General, I wish you to place your division across this road, and I wish you to get there, if possible, without being seen by the enemy. Can you get there?" McLaws responded, "I know of nothing to prevent me," then asked permission to reconnoiter the ground. Lee informed him that Johnston was already doing it, so McLaws requested permission to join Johnston. Longstreet, who was pacing not too far away and listening to the conversation, came over and exclaimed, "No, sir, I do not wish you to leave your division." Longstreet then pointed to the map and drew a parallel line to the Emmitsburg Road, not a perpendicular line as Lee had done. Longstreet then said, "I wish your division placed so." Lee then interrupted, saying, "No, General, I wish it placed just perpendicular to that." Again, McLaws requested to reconnoiter the ground, and again Longstreet denied him. With that, McLaws rode back to his division to get them in place. Lee then rode to meet with General Ewell on the left flank. By 11 o'clock, he was back on Seminary Ridge, where Longstreet got his orders to advance the divisions of McLaws and Hood. Evander Law's brigade of Hood's division was going to be late, so he requested a delay to wait for the brigade. Lee agreed, and then rode off. Even some of Longstreet's supporters, like Edward Porter Alexander and his aide Moxley Sorrell, saw that Longstreet did not go about his work with the vigor with which he performed previous military duties assigned to him by Lee. According to one of his biographers, he may have let his disagreement with Lee influence his performance. What was lacking in Longstreet was the energetic and careful preparation that had been a hallmark of his generalship at 2nd Manassas, Sharpsburg, and Fredericksburg. The failings on this day, however, were not solely Longstreet's. Like an ungainly beast, the Confederate Army stumbled into battle on July 2nd. McLaws's division led Longstreet's corps, with McLaws and Johnston in the lead. Longstreet rode in front of Hood's division. As the lead division was about to crest a hill, McLaws and Johnston realized that Little Round Top could be seen, and the signal station there would pick up their movement. When the column of troops stopped, Longstreet rode to see what was the matter. After explaining the situation to his corps commander, McLaws commented that they would have to countermarch to get to another route, so Longstreet told them to countermarch. Johnston claimed that he recommended to avoid the hill by going through a field like the artillery had done, but Longstreet preferred to use the road. It was around 3 p.m. before the first of McLaws' troops made it to the field, but when artillery opened up on his lead brigade under Joseph Kershaw, McLaws realized that Longstreet had been wrong when he told him that he would be on the flank, that no enemy troops would be opposite him. McLaws wanted to attack, but Longstreet held off until Hood could deploy his troops. Hood sent scouts to his front and determined that he could swing around to the right and flank the Union position. Longstreet denied the request no less than 4 times, then rode to Hood personally to order him to attack, then rode back to observe the assaults. In the words of a Texan, he sat astride his horse like an iron man, with his spyglass to his eye, coolly watching the effect of our shots. Limbs of trees fell and crashed around him, yet he sat as unmoved as a statue. The attack began at around 4 p.m. Hood's men attacked Devil's Den, the Valley of Death, the Wheat Field, and the Round Tops, while McLaws's troops attacked the Wheat Field and the Peach Orchard. Behind the Mississippians of William Barksdale and their successful charge came the Georgians of William Wofford. Ahead of the men from Georgia was Longstreet himself. When the brigade saw him, they cheered. Longstreet shouted, "Cheer less, men, and fight more." The Georgians passed a group of prisoners captured by the Mississippians. One of the Federals asked who the general was. When the man found out it was Longstreet, he stated, "No wonder we are thrashed upon every field. There is not in the whole of our army a lieutenant general who would have risked his life in such a charge." Longstreet remained at the Peach Orchard watching the attacks take place. Not since his time at the Piper Farm at Antietam did he get so close to the fighting. One of his biographers claimed that it may be because he promised Lee that he would take personal responsibility for McLaws's performance. While watching Hood and more closely McLaws's division, General Pickett approached. He and his men had come from Chambersburg, and he had rode ahead to receive his orders. After watching the battle with his friend, Pickett then went back to his division, finding out that Lee did not need him that day, that he would be sent for when ready. Longstreet called off the assaults when it got dark, but did not report personally to Lee. Instead, he sent an aide to relay a summary of the day's actions. One of Longstreet's biographers explained the situation well when he wrote, "His decision not to confer with Lee was probably due more to his mood than to the necessity for a short horseback ride. He had watched his 2 divisions fight magnificently only to suffer heavy losses in an attack he never wanted. He had been unable to conceal his anger with Lee's plan, and after the sacrifice he had witnessed, his dissatisfaction could only have been worse that night." Lee issued orders that the offensive would be continued at daylight the next day. Longstreet would claim that he never received the order, and neither he nor Lee informed Pickett of his role. Although he claimed to have not received the order, Edward Porter Alexander's version of events described him going to Longstreet's headquarters and the corps commander informing him that they would renew the attack at daylight. Nevertheless, Longstreet went to bed that night angry at the horrendous loss of life that day, despite his objections to the plan.